This is a chapter from my book. Huh? This is the first kind of introduction to me, my life. It's called Life and What to Do with It. I first appeared upside down and have lived my life like that ever since. The midwife slapped my bottom. I screamed, and she told my mother, "We his lungs, it could grow up to be Prime Minister." Father accused her of GBH and phoned his lawyer. Everything came out pointed. I think I was the early prototype for Mr. Spock from Star Trek. I bade my first hearty hello in this early northern dawn, slipping into the world like a sunburned kipper in Vaseline. I was born on the 7th of December in the cold winter of '56 in a block of council flats surrounded by World War II Nissan huts in the old mill town of Glossop in Derbyshire. Our rabbit hutch was situated between, on one side, a tone-deaf double bass player with arthritis, and on the other, a teddy boy whose auto-change record player blasted out "Just Walking in the Rain" by Johnny Ray over and over again. My parents took to wearing Boots brand ear defenders. My eldest sister Susan, she of the bouffant hairstyle, thick lipstick and pendulous earrings, looked strange, mainly because she was 7 years old at the time. I was small when I was a child, as is invariably the case, and could always get away with wearing not a lot. A white designer off-the-hip towel nappy with a large, vicious-looking safety pin holding it in place usually did the trick. And I spent most of my day gurgling answers to important questions of a philosophical nature put to me by my inquisitive sister, like, "Who's a pretty ickle baby den?" and "Ma'am, where does all this sickie come from?" I am told mother would never get all the left shoulders of her blouses and cardigans clean fast enough. But I have apologized. 2 years later, a mixed-up bundle of crumpled underwear and eyeshadow dove onto the horizon. My younger sister, Jennifer, was born, complete with electric hair curlers and high heels. The flat had been too small for us. Have you ever tried cooking bacon and eggs for 5 on the bottom deck of a crowded double-decker bus in rush hour? Soon we moved to a semi-detached house on Primrose Lane, close to the woodyard, next to a mill that would soon be converted into a toy factory. The house itself was in a bit of a mess. The garage was half built, and the garden looked like a German soldier could pop up from his foxhole any minute and take pot shots at the back door. All that was really missing was the barbed wire and harmonica solos. My father worked long into the night, plastering walls, building a new staircase, finishing the garage, driving the whole family nuts with his enthusiasm. During the Second World War, he'd been in the coastal defence, sailing in converted trawlers, bravely scouring the heaving seas for cunning Jerry submarines, and then on the Norwegian supply run from Narvik to Plymouth via Australia. He still tells tales of shark fishing from prison ships with baited grappling hooks and paying taxi fares with tins of black market marmalade. The war lasted longer than it really should have, because, I believe, he acquired a rhesus monkey from somewhere and trained it to operate his ASDIC sonar detection system. Sadly, it fell overboard, one afternoon whilst practising semaphore. I grew upwards, as most people do, only I seemed one-dimensional, no width or breadth, just height. My mother got worried and took me to see a Dr. Armour, who was as puzzled as she was. I think she was terrified that Dad would mistake me for a floorboard. My grandmother, on my mother's side, owned a chip shop, and I spent many happy hours sitting behind the counter watching her make chips on a device like a midget cubist guillotine. As an innocent cleaned potato was placed on a square cutting blade, and then she pulled down a long handle that pushed the potato through, from whence the square white chips fell into a stainless steel pan of cold water. She always got fresh fish, and she was renowned in the district for her mushy peas, and she could always quote the great bard at the first drop of a battered sausage. When the war in the garden had ceased, and the German had all gone to build Volkswagen Beetles and swig steins of frothing beer served by stout Fräuleins, we started to keep chickens in a timber and netting run. One day, as I was cheerfully feeding them with handfuls of thrown corn, one got shirty and pecked me at the inner lower leg, drawing blood. I had a hard time with those chickens, that's why I love them now, especially with thick gravy and roast potatoes. My education at that minute took place in an ancient Frankenstein's castle sort of a place, Zion Methodist Church School in Glossop. The shivering pupils sat on cold stone benches, writing lessons, drinking radiator-warmed milk, and sucking on soft rich tea biscuits at break time. No wonder they often suffered from chronic piles. I missed out on play school altogether. I could never understand teachers insisting on children playing at full speed one minute, then sleeping flat out the next. I suppose it gave the teacher a chance to mop spilled coffee off the walls and find wayward kids busy comparing name tags in the cloakroom. At Primrose Lane we had a teacher, Mrs. Robinson, who on hot summer days would pass delicious Vimto lollies over the garden fence, and when the ice cream van came around, we raided our piggy banks and bought fruit-flavoured ice lollies in the shape of polar bears on sticks. They somehow always seemed to have very pained expressions. When Mum and Dad went out, Susan and I watched the Wooden Tops and Rag, Tag and Bobtail on the black and white TV set, huddled by a glowing coal fire, nibbling buttered digestive biscuits. Dad had a .22 rifle that he'd swapped for a pair of battered binoculars, and we used to plink away at tin cans at the other end of the garden, sending passers-by covering their heads and reaching for tin helmets. Now we were armed. We could give that damned German soldier a run for his 9 deep marks, and alas, too late. One day, a storm broke, and the sound of thunder rolled around the sky like a herd of fractious rhinos in a breeding frenzy. A fireball streaked out of the heavens and skimmed tiles off the roof, then bounced onto the road. My father ran after it, shouting to me Mum, "Put the kettle on, we've got visitors." It wasn't until much later in my life that I discovered I had an Uncle Peter who was also fascinated by the science of astronomy and could read the starry heavens like the familiar names in his family Bible. We sold Primrose Lane reluctantly having paid off half the mortgage, and moved to our first public house, the Barley Mow, in Droylsden, Manchester. I still have a reel of tape with the performance of Rolf Harris's current hit of the time, Sunrise, as played on milk bottle and spoons, with vocals by yours truly. It also meant a change of school, from a cavernous, dismal dungeon to a place with real children, a place where laughter filled the chalk dust air and small obnoxious boys got duffed up in a hidden corner of the playground. Sadly, my mother and father aren't with us anymore, but I wish they were. My sisters, if they see this, I apologise.